Our old pal Robert Lawrence Stine was a middle-aged man in the 80s and 90s, writing horror fiction for teens. And what's more relevant to teens than the horrors of dating? So today we're talking about every point horror and Fear Street that Bob wrote with the word date in the title. Blind date, broken date, first date, double date, and the perfect date. And how to tell them apart. Quick addendum, there is one more called The Prom Date, but it's number 11 in the Fear Street Seniors mini-series, and I think you kind of have to read all of those to know what's going on, so I won't be talking about that one today. Although I may make a separate video on Patreon strictly about that one book. So I'll be going a little more in depth with these books and determining how likely each of these scenarios was to actually happen to teens dating in the 90s. But first I'm going to give you a quick one-line synopsis of each of these books. Going chronologically, that means we start with Blind Date. Dumb, horny teenage boy decides it's a good idea to date a random sexy voice girl who calls his house, but surprise, turns out she wants to kill him. Broken Date. Dumb, vain teenage girl refuses to wear her glasses because she doesn't like the way they look, and thinks she sees her boyfriend murder someone, and spends the entire book refusing to have a simple conversation that would have cleared the whole thing up in 5 minutes. First Date. There are only 2 boys you can date. One is a stereotypical Fear Street toxic angry boy, TM, and the other is a serial killer. Choose wisely. Double Date. Stupid, horny teenage boy tries to date twins. They pretend to have a psychotic triplet in order to enact an elaborate revenge scheme. And finally, the perfect date. This one has zombies. First up, we have Blind Date. First published in 1986, it was also the first book to be reprinted under the point horror banner. Our protagonist is dum-dum teenage boy Carrie, who has some amnesia around a car accident that happened the year before, wherein his brother's girlfriend was killed, and his brother is only referred to as being not here. He starts getting random phone calls from a sexy-voiced girl who he agrees to go on a blind date with for God knows what reason, while he's also getting threatening phone calls from someone that he thinks is referencing an accident that happened when he was playing football. He broke another player's leg, and everyone hates him for it. Of course, both these types of phone calls end up being made by the same person, a girl who claims her name is Mandy. She also claims to be the sister of Carrie's brother Donald's girlfriend, Amanda, who died in the accident. So we're supposed to believe that somebody named their daughters Mandy and Amanda. For some reason, it never enters Carrie's head that Mandy is short for Amanda, but like I said, he's an idiot. He is a dumb, horny teenage boy. We get this theme a lot when Stine writes teen boy protagonists. They're all dumb and horny and stupid. So it turns out the girl who says her name is Mandy is actually a different girl entirely, no connection to anything, except she was in the mental hospital with Donald, who it turns out is not here because he tried to kill Carrie because Carrie was driving the car that killed Amanda. It's so convoluted, guys. Donald shows up at the end, saves the day, while Carrie is in a cabin where not Mandy, I think her name is actually Nancy. She's hitting his legs, breaking his toes, working her way up, trying to break all his bones. And then in what's really hilarious, campy, R.L. Stine fashion, sticks a moose head off the wall onto his head. The book is pretty boring in the first half, and then in the third quarter veers into some pretty ableist, mental institution talk, mental health handled pretty badly, and then the last quarter picks up and moves into just straight camp. It's still ableist as hell, but it's so funny and stupid I can't really be offended by it. So if we're rating this on how realistic it is, Stine never handles mental health very well. He does not know how mental illness works. None of that is realistic. He apparently thinks crazy is just a diagnosis on its own. So all of that part of it is absolute bullshit. I suppose some of it could be realistic. There's no supernatural element. It's just a crazy girl who escaped a mental institution and came after a boy because she thought she was the sister of the girl he accidentally vehicular manslaughtered. So I suppose some elements of that could happen, but I wouldn't worry yourself too much. Teens dating in the 90s, you're probably not going to encounter this situation. Next up is Broken Date. Published in 1988 by not Point Horror, not Fear Street, it's actually published by Archway Paperbacks. This was still a couple years before Point Horror had become its own imprint and started republishing books under that banner. Not all of R.L. Stine's books from the 80s got the Point Horror treatment, so they were published by other random publishers. This is one of those. So in Broken Date, our protagonist is Jamie, a dumb teenage girl who refuses to wear her glasses out because she doesn't like the way they look. And hey, I get it. I spent all of 5th grade not wearing my glasses and just squinting at everything. I really can't recommend it. So Jamie goes to the mall, and she thinks she sees her boyfriend Tom rob a jewelry store and shoot the clerk. And the title Broken Date comes from this happens when he broke a date with her, so she went to the mall with her friend instead. Turns out he's just working and too embarrassed to tell her that he has to work to make money. So I guess everyone in this book has some weird pride around strange things. Of course, it wasn't Tom who robbed the store and shot the clerk. And the only reason she thought that this guy was Tom was because they both have this shocking white blonde hair. It's always white blonde. Stine apparently did not know the word platinum. None of these authors in the 80s and 90s ever wrote platinum hair. They always said white blonde, and Stine was the most egregious about it. So it turns out it's not Tom. It's this guy named, give me a minute, Oki Farnham. Oki Farnham, because that's a name. He kidnaps her, takes her to this cabin. His girlfriend Dolly is there. Turns out Tom saw this happen and launched himself onto the top of the van and rode on the top of the van all the way out to this cabin. It's very funny, very campy in what is otherwise a mostly boring book. And then the day is saved by Tom, who Oki thinks he drowned because Tom is on the swim team, so he can hold his breath for 4 minutes. Very specifically, we're told 4 minutes. Keep that 4 minutes in mind because it comes back up in later books. So on the scale of how realistic is this, I guess it could happen. For sure, people don't wear their glasses and can't see shit and would mistake one person for another, but also they've been dating since like junior high, so years and years, you would think she'd recognize him. The situation could happen, but all of her reactions to it are completely unrealistic. I'm gonna say teens in the 90s, you probably don't have to worry about being in this situation unless you're a complete idiot who refuses to talk to the boy you've been dating since junior high. Although I do wonder what that conversation would look like. Hey Tom, did you rob a jewelry store and kill the clerk today? I don't know. The fact that she's known this guy for so long and still thinks he would do that speaks volumes about their relationship though, doesn't it? And now we move on to Fear Street. First Date is number 16 in the Fear Street series. It was published in 1992. Our protagonist is Chelsea, a 15-year-old girl who has never been on a date before. Suddenly she's presented with 2 options. One of them is a serial killer with mommy issues, and the other is your typical Fear Street, shady side, toxic, angry boy TM. It's a thing. You start noticing it if you read a lot of Fear Street. Like, even if these boys aren't killers, the love interest boys are always just the worst, red flags everywhere, run away from them. It's revealed to us pretty quickly in this book which one of these boys is the serial killer, because we keep getting these sections from his point of view where he keeps dating Chelsea. Generally, title drop, he kills them on the first date, but somehow Chelsea just keeps slipping out of his grasp, so he keeps trying and failing to murder her, and it's almost slapstick the way he keeps failing this. It's Like, throw some yakety sax behind it, it's a comedy. The FBI get involved and ask her about these boys who both look nearly identical. They're very similar looking boys. She thinks that the toxic angry one is the serial killer and never thinks about the sweet shy one that she's dating who is the serial killer. So she turns the wrong boy over to the FBI. And in the climax of the book, she again survives because this guy likes to strangle people. Chelsea plays the saxophone and has amazing breath control. She can hold her breath for 4 minutes. Stine loves this 4 minutes of holding your breath thing. Whether it's because you're a swim boy. Whether it's because you're on the swim team or you play the saxophone, he loves this 4 minutes thing. I don't know why. So serial killer boy thinks that he's killed her. Thinks that he strangled her. She just played dead and then came back to stop him from killing her friend who also came over to the house. It's a whole thing. The FBI agent shows up and takes him in. So yeah, the day saved once again by holding your breath for 4 minutes. I know I keep saying that these books are boring, parts of them are boring. This one is mostly boring all the way through, which also makes it the most realistic. I mean, there's always some dude out there who hates women and wants to kill them, so extremely, depressingly realistic, this one. So be careful, teen girls in the 90s, who you have your first date with. Next up is probably my favorite one on this list, Double Date, Fear Street number 23, published in 1994. This is the one, if you bought it new in the 90s, it came with a little sheet of temporary tattoos because the girl in the book has, supposedly, it's all fake. Everything in this book is fake. But the girl in the book has a little blue butterfly tattoo on her shoulder blade. Our protagonist for this one is Bobby, the man. He calls himself Bobby the man. He's fucking insufferable. He's a horny, conceited idiot boy who thinks he's hot shit and tries to date every single girl in the school. Supposedly he's broken hearts all throughout the school. There are a pair of twins that he decides he's going to date both of them in the same weekend without one of them knowing he was dating the other. This boy is a trash goblin. The twins start terrorizing him. He thinks he's with one, but they're acting weird. Supposedly only one of them knows that he's dating both of them, but then one of them starts talking about how they have to kill the other one, and then they start telling him that we're actually not twins. There's actually a crazy triplet who we sent to live away with our aunt, or some fucking relative, who cares? A bunch of stupid bullshit happens that just, he's never in danger, he's just humiliated. And then it comes out that there's no triplet. This was an elaborate revenge scheme concocted by the twins and one of the girls that he used to date. And at the end, they're at the house of the twins. All these girls that he used to date are there. The twins' dad is there. Bobby the man starts going off about how your psychotic triplet daughter, not these two twins, but your other daughter, is trying to kill me. And the dad is like, what are you talking about? I only have twins. And he's like, the one with the tattoo. And the dad's like, they better not have a tattoo. This boy is so stupid. It's absolutely hilarious. So once again, we have dumb, horny boy. Like I said, that's a theme when Stine writes male protagonists. As far as how realistic this is, you're not gonna, no one is gonna go to these lengths. This is just a pure revenge fantasy. It's hilarious to read about. No one is actually going to do this in real life. Dating teens in the 90s, you're safe from this ever happening to you. Which brings us to the last book on this list, The Perfect Date. It's Fear Street number 37, published in 1996. What do I say about The Perfect Date? I already said it's the one with zombies. That's how you can tell it apart. It's the only supernatural one on this list. They're very confusing zombies, though. So we have dumb, horny teenage boy Brady, who is basically Bobby from the last book we talked about. He has a girlfriend who dies in a horrific sledding accident, getting her face all chopped off with the runners on the sled and a thorn bush she sledded into, I think. Something like that. And then a year later, he meets this beautiful, just entrancing girl named Rosha, and is immediately obsessed with her. Just like Carrie in Blind Date, only hearing this girl's voice on the phone and being absolutely obsessed with her. At least in this one, Brady sees the girl before he becomes obsessed. So he's obsessed with Rosha. He must date her, even though he has a girlfriend. So he sneaks around with her a little bit before his girlfriend before he just finally comes clean with his girlfriend way far too deep into the story. This whole time, there's some random, horribly scarred up girl trying to warn Brady. By the way, he never gives a thought to his dead girlfriend who, you know, her face was all messed up, and now here's this girl with her face all messed up. I'm just saying, Brady's an idiot. And then out of nowhere, just sudden zombies. Or, there's zombies, but also body swapping somehow. Okay, Rosha, this beautiful, perfect girl, is actually Sharon, the dead girlfriend who died in the sledding accident. But she's in this random dead girl's body. And the scarred girl, who has been following Brady around trying to warn him about Rosha, is actually the unnamed owner of the Rosha body. Believe me when I say reading this shit, it's not any more coherent than what I'm trying to say. So the scarred body is actually Sharon, dead sledding accident girlfriend, and the girl in that body is actually the Rosha body's real owner, and they show up and start fighting each other in front of Brady on this cliff top. This is so convoluted. I'm trying to make it make sense. It doesn't make sense. It's not explained. Body hopping zombies. I keep knocking into my microphone. I'm so sorry. Body hopping zombies. The girl in the scarred up body attacks the Rosha body girl. By the way, her name Rosha is it's including the last name, but it's an anagram of Sharon, whatever their last names were. I read this book and I don't know how to describe it. Rosha, no. Unnamed, scarred up girl keeps yelling at Rosha that she wants her beautiful body back. She keeps calling it her beautiful body because, again, middle-aged man writing teenage girls. So, some real weird men writing women here from our friend Bob Stine. So these two body-hopping zombie girls start fighting each other and ripping each other's limbs off, ripping their heads off. They go rolling off down the cliff. Problem solved, I guess? I guess this kills body-snatching zombies? But Brady got strangled by the Sharon slash Rosha. So he's actually dead now. He goes to try to make up with his girlfriend, and she's like, "Oh my god, you're so cold." And he's like, "Yeah, I'm fucking dead." And the book ends with her backing away from him and screaming. So not a very good book. It's not good. But the ending just goes 0 to 100, over the top, crank it to 11. I'm not sure why. It makes no sense. And yeah, suddenly zombies. I don't actually have to rate this one on the realism scale, do I? Hey, teens of the 90s, you're not gonna encounter zombies. This isn't gonna happen. This one, you don't have to worry about this one. You're good. So of these, like I said, Double Date is my favorite because it's just so stupid. It's so much fun all the way through. You fucking hate this guy. He's such a little asshole. And then watching him get humiliated in front of all these girls is amazing. First Date is probably the most realistic. but also nothing truly wild happens, so it's not that entertaining to read. Blind Date has some pretty damaging stereotypes about mental health and mental illness, so it was 86. We weren't that enlightened about these things. I can give it a pass for just the time it was written in and Stine being an idiot about mental health. But it's also pretty boring most of the way through until you get to the cabin and the girl just going completely wild, breaking his legs from the toes up and singing. She's singing that whole like the leg bones connected to the knee bone connected to all. I'm not singing. I only sing on Patreon. But that one gets super campy at the end. It doesn't make up for how boring it is before that. Kind of the same thing with Broken Date. I just want to strangle this stupid girl the whole way through. Just talk to your boyfriend. First of all, why do you think your boyfriend is capable of murder? You've known him your whole life. This is a bad relationship. It's a red flag if you think your boyfriend just murdered a jewelry store manager in the mall and you don't feel like you can talk to him and ask him, hey, where actually were you? And also he apparently is ashamed of having to have a job, so he doesn't tell her that that's where he was. It's a bad relationship. Reddit would tell you to break up. I'm telling you to break up. You're all too stupid and immature to be together. And then, The Perfect Date, this last one, the zombie one, the end is bonkers, but the rest of it is not that entertaining to read, and the protagonist is stupid, and it's kind of a slog to get through until you get to the zombies. Stine does revisit some sort of familiar themes from book to book here, and by that I mean he repeats himself. The 4-minute holding your breath thing happens in 2 of these books. 3 of them have male idiot protagonists. The Perfect Date kind of repeats quite a few things from the previous books on this list. Blind Date, Double Date, and The Perfect Date all have one of the girls driving the boy's car all wild and crazy and either getting into an accident or almost getting into an accident, basically just scaring the shit out of him with her driving. This happens in 3 of these 5 books. In Blind Date and The Perfect Date, the girl that the boy protagonist is obsessed with can't be found. She gives him an address or a name or a phone number that he tries to go find, and it ends up being a disconnected phone number, or the address doesn't exist, or the address can't be where she lives. In Blind Date, the address that Mandy gives him, I think her name is actually Nancy, the address she gives him is to the brother's dead girlfriend's house. And because Carrie has amnesia around this, he doesn't realize. He's apparently blocked everything about the girlfriend out of his head. So the parents are there and start screaming at him because he's like asking for Mandy, aka Amanda, and obviously she's dead. They're like, what's wrong with you? He can't remember, has no idea. And in The Perfect Date, the address that Rosha gives him, it's on Fear Street. That's the Fear Street connection, but it's just an empty lot. Phone numbers are disconnected. The protagonist boy can't find these girls in either of these books. And then Double Date and The Perfect Date are basically, the protagonist is basically the same. Like Brady is basically, Diet Bobby. They're both cheating, womanizing pieces of trash. Right, guys, so that's all your R.L. Stine date books, except, like I said, for the Fear Street Seniors, number 11, The Prom Date. I will read that one. I'm not sure how much context I'm going to need for it. I don't want to read all the 10 books that come before it. I've never read any of that series, that mini-series. But I will read that one, and I'll make a separate video and stick that up on Patreon. It'll be like in the $5 tier if you want to hop over there, sign up, watch that one. I haven't read the book yet. It'll be up there as soon as I can manage it. Alright guys, thanks for coming along with me on this journey of dating with R.L. Stine. Don't date zombies. Apparently it does not end well.